Hello everyone, my name is Paul Third, and before we even start the video, yes, this is a paid review. However, if you watched last week's video, you will know that this is going to be the very last paid review on this channel. It's done. There's no more reviews on this channel whatsoever, and there's no more paid content on this channel. However, right, this is going to be the last one because I did need to finish this studio. I needed the money. However, I'm not shilling doing a paid review for just any random piece of software. I've been using ddmf REALPHONES for about a year and a half, since about July 2022. I've already done a video review of version 1.8, which I'll leave here. If you're looking for audio examples, there'll be none here. David Noisy from Mixbus TV has already made one. I'll leave a link up to here, and he's got all the audio examples you could look for. However, in this video, I'm looking to give you the important updates if you're already a ddmf REALPHONES user, or if you've just always thought about getting into REALPHONES but you weren't really keen on the features of the last upgrade. I'm going to go through the features from a user's perspective, somebody that's been using it for over a year and a half and trusts it, and I'm going to go through the new upgrades and give my own opinions at the end of the video on whether REALPHONES still is one of the best software for room simulation in headphones. Right, so what is new in version 2? ddmf have added 8 new professional studio emulation sets. Now, every room has been chosen specifically because they all have their own specific character. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. My advice is don't get distracted by all the rooms, right? Learn these rooms. You need to get to a point where you can identify certain things in these rooms when you listen to these mixes. Certain things that you could pick up, certain strengths and weaknesses, so you know in regards to translation when you listen to this room, it should have this specific sound. It should sound boxy in this region, or maybe there's a bit of sibilance, or again, maybe there's a strength or a weakness that you can identify, and you know when you listen to that room that your mix should have one of these kind of specific characteristics. Because essentially, if you don't learn the rooms, what's going to happen is that you're just basically going to distract your own judgment. Now, it's not just professional studios that they have emulated this time around. They've actually emulated some acoustically untreated spaces. There's actually a room called Nick's Home Studio, which looks like it's got a pair of Neumanns in it. I think it's a Bluetooth speaker. For me, this is a really, really good addition, because when you are thinking about translation and you're thinking about who's normally paying the bills, it's normally your client, which is going to be your artist, right? Sometimes it might be labels, but a lot of the times for many of you watching this video, you're probably going to be working for artists who are going to have normally untreated acoustic spaces, but normally you'll find that they'll buy kind of half decent speakers, but the rooms are never treated. Now, it's not just rooms, they've actually emulated spaces. In the last upgrade, they added in club and they added in car. Now, they have really surpassed themselves this time round, as they have now added TV sets, Bluetooth speakers, smartphones, laptops, which include MacBook and Air, and they've even got public spaces like cafes, parties and concert halls. Essentially anywhere where you would imagine music to be consumed, they've thought long and hard and they've tried their best to emulate those spaces. This is something that I felt the last version kind of really lacked. I felt that it did a great job in kind of recreating the sound of speakers in a room. However, I think what Slate VSX always had on REALPHONES was the amount of reference options that it had. This now, in my opinion, makes REALPHONES like the top of the tree. And also via the system-wide app, you can now use a throughout, which means that you can send an unprocessed signal to a pair of speakers. This is a great feature because if you're trying to test like the reliability of REALPHONES in regards to like referencing speakers in a room, if you've actually got speakers in a room playing and you can just quickly take off the headphones, back on, back off, back on, you're going to get an idea of, you know, the effectiveness of the room calibration. For many of you that have monitors in your room, you can now really start to kind of tweak things and try and recreate your own room in headphones. Now, that's really most of the upgrades. However, there is one more feature that I am so happy that they added, because it was always a feature that I wished they had, but they've now got it. You can now create your own custom headphone EQs. You don't need to use the REALPHONES headphone calibration. Now, in my kind of setup, I've got all OS 5X, I've got HiFiMan HE1000 SE, and I've got the HiFiMan Ananda Nanos. There is no calibration for that. However, I do have my own custom Harman EQs, which I can now emulate in RealPhones, as the EQ tuning option has 14 customizable filters. If you don't know how to EQ your headphones to Harman, you can use Auto EQ. I'll link to a video up here on how you can do that. Now, what's even better is that you can utilize the already existing snapshot feature in RealPhones, which means that you could now have your headphone EQs in snapshots. And again, you could have them in certain rooms if you want, and everything will be saved. And there you have it. There is really all the upgrades that they've made from version 1.8 to version 2. However, the thing that you want to know most from an experienced user of RealPhones is, what does it sound like? Have they really improved the algorithm? I would have to say 100%. As soon as they came out, I made an Instagram story because I was like, yes, like I didn't think RealPhones could get better, but it actually has. I used to use the default setup in 1.8. It was basically like a pair of mains, and it had the big bottom in it, and that's what I used to use all of the time. Now, in comparison to their new kind of main reference, like their ideal kind of default reference, which is basically a pair of three-ways, and then their ambience is like the mains. In comparison from version 1.8 to the near fields in the new algorithm, what I can hear is that they've sorted out the transient side of it. In comparison, you could hear that the old algorithm was a little bit present in its transients, and it was maybe a little bit on the harsh-ish side, where, you know, I was listening to my ultra near fields, the new Kali ones behind me, and I was listening back and forth, and I could definitely hear that the transients were a little bit duller, where they sounded a little bit hyped in the old 1.8 version. Where in the new version 2, the transients are basically like exact, like mwah, chef kiss. Now, in regards to all of the new studio emulations, I think they sound unbelievable. I've got a ton of new snapshots now. I really like the NS10s. Well, I don't like the NS10s because it sounds fucking horrible, but there's two different studios. The second one, I don't really think sounds like my experience of NS10s in a room. I remember I've heard 3 different types of NS10s in a room, and they were well treated, they were proper studios, and I never ever liked it. And I always could hear like this kind of hollowness, but the same kind of fizzy kind of harshness at the top. And I think you could always hear a bit of transients in it, but it sounded hollow and harsh and thin. You're always missing the bottom end. And in the first studio, I was like, that's it. Like, that is how I hear NS10s in a room. That's my experience of NS10s. And then there's one, I think it's the Cinelab, and they've got a pair of cubes. And I remember I've heard Orotones twice, again in treated rooms. And I remember one of them had 2 and one of them had 1 in mono. And in RealPhones, you could select mono and stereo. Now, when I pressed the mono button and I listened to the cubes, I was like, yes, that is it. That there is the sound of like Orotones in mono, just one mono Orotone speaker in a treated room. I was like, that's it there. And then when I was going through the rest of them, I was like, this just sounds unbelievably realistic. Some of them, like the parties and like the bigger rooms, just kind of really sound like you've added a bit of convolution reverb to them. But like the car, I think, has been improved. There's 3 different ones. The laptop, I'm a bit unsure. Because I've got a MacBook Pro, and I don't think it sounds like a MacBook Pro. However, the good thing with RealPhones is that you could bring down the ambience. Now, I found with the smartphone, I think it was the middle one that was the closest to my P30 Pro. And again, I was listening back and forth, and I was just kind of tailoring the ambience sometimes just so I can get it right. Because the one where it's like a Bluetooth speakers in a room, I like the last one, which I think is trying to emulate a JBL, but it sounds like it's in a really kind of really big-ish, really shitty sounding bedroom. But it's a kind of a bigger bedroom where I brought down the ambience, and I was like, oh my god, like now that sounds like I'm listening to Bluetooth speakers in my house. Honestly, I was just like, wow, like I could almost kind of picture it there. And that there is my opinion. I do think that Dsonic RealPhones is the best sounding headphone room simulation software on the market that I have heard. It's so realistic. And there you go. That's my honest opinion. That there is the final, the very last sponsored paid review, actually the last review on this channel. And yeah, that's it. My name's Paul Third, and I'll see you again whenever I see you with some educational content.